So if you know me personally or you've been following the channel for a while, which I am severely sorry that you had to sit through my early days, but nonetheless, if you have been, you've probably seen me mention Platinum a number of times. And in my best attempts to sound clever, there's a reason for that. Platinum is one of my favorite Pokémon games of all time. And with that said, I guess you can expect some bias from this review, though I will do my best to look at this game as fairly as possible. And to be fair, I do have some legitimate issues with Platinum, so I guess I didn't really need to say that just then. Well anyway, Pokémon Platinum is Generation 4's equivalent of Pokémon Emerald, as in it's the vastly enhanced version of the previous games, in this case, Diamond and Pearl. And being it's the enhanced version, Platinum obviously brings a lot of changes to the table, some drastic while others minor, so keeping that in mind, I will try to acknowledge a few of the changes I deem most noteworthy. Now, with the intro of sorts out of the way, why don't we get into this already? I know I certainly want to. This is my review of Pokémon Platinum. Per the norm of Pokémon games, right at the beginning, we are greeted by the region's professor, in Sinnoh's case, Professor Rowan. He gives us the usual spiel of this being a magical world where creatures named Pokémon live, and then we are tasked with choosing our avatar's gender and end name, and also our rival's name I suppose, but for this review, I'm just gonna call him by his canon name, Barry. Anyway, upon getting past all of this, the first thing that hits us is the realization of how slow this game really is. Now, in all fairness, Pokémon Platinum does have a slightly faster game speed than Pokémon Diamond and Pearl, but compared to other generations, Gen 4 is by far the slowest. You learn to get past it, though, eventually. But with that realization now behind us and after we have a run-in with Barry, we then venture out towards Route 201, and while we're there, Barry has the ingenious idea of running into the tall grass with no Pokémon. I mean, really, what are you gonna do if confronted by a level 2 Bidoof? That's right, nothing, you'd be screwed. Before that could happen though, we are given a talking to by Professor Rowan who scolds us, more so Barry, for doing something so reckless, which, to be fair, is kind of a part of Barry's character. With this, upon recognizing our courage or something, Rowan gives us the choice of 3 starter Pokémon, Turtwig, Chimchar and Piplup, the traditional grass, fire and water type starters respectively. On my playthroughs, I usually like to go with Turtwig, but occasionally I will choose Chimchar, but only if I'm feeling experimental, I guess. Anyhow, with our starter Pokémon chosen, our journey begins, pretty much. We are given a Pokédex by Rowan shortly at his lab in Sanjam Town. and from there on, Platinum follows the traditional Pokémon game design of having the player go around the region and collect 8 gym badges, so they can then challenge the region's Elite Four, and then the champion. But saying that alone is kind of a lazy way to go about things in my opinion. So I'm gonna cover a few scenarios throughout the adventure and talk about the gym leaders and such as well. So, with our Pokédex in hand and our starter Pokémon and a Pokéball on our belt, we start making our way to the first gym, which is located in Oreburgh City, the other side of Oreburgh Gate, aka our first introduction to caves in Sinnoh, which, the DS Pokémon games are rather infamous with their encounter rates, and so considering that caves in Pokémon games are designed where you can find a Pokémon on any tile, yeah, it's not fun. But anyway, before we get to Oreburgh Gate, though, we encounter a mysterious fellow known as Lunar in Jubilife City. Well, that's his code name anyway, but that aside, he apparently works for the International Police, which was the first mention of any kind of authority in the Pokémon world up to that point, so that's pretty cool. Also, Lunar is one of the best characters in Platinum, throughout the main series, well, except Oris, in fact, because he's a reoccurring character. Your encounters with Lunar may not seem like they really add up to much, they're arguably kind of one note, but it's a joy hearing his theme whenever he's on screen, and he's well written too. Tangent aside, I feel like I'm going to be saying that a lot throughout this review. Once we get to Oreburgh City and find the gym leader, Rourke, in the Oreburgh mine, we then challenge him to a battle for the Cold Badge. Rourke is a rock type gym leader by the way, so if you chose Turtwig or Piplup as your starter, this should be a cakewalk for you. However, if you chose Chimchar, you might want to pick up a grass type like Mewtwo from Route 204, just north of Jubilife City, or a matchup from Route 207 located just north of Oreburgh City. Or, if neither of those entices you, you can just level your Chimchar up to 14 where it then learns Mach Punch, a fighting type move, upon evolving into Monferno, so the choice is all yours. But anyway, after that we then start making our way to our second gym challenge, which is located in Eterna City, but not before having a run-in with this game's version of Team Rocket, Team Galactic. Okay, in all fairness, there's a different motive at play for Team Galactic, and it is heavily implied that the grunts are kind of being led on in places, so there's a little more development than simply a gang of criminals I guess. After swiftly beating them though, we continue our journey to Eterna City. There's a sequence of events leading up to a battle with one of Team Galactic's commanders, Mars, in the Valley Windworks just outside of Floroma Town, which is, I feel, acts more of a padding element than anything, but Mars does put up a battle, if only for her Purugly, which is the strongest thing you will encounter up to that point, but with Monferno's Mach Punch or a matchup, you should have an easy time. If not though, prepared to get wiped a couple of times I guess. Purugly's a tank Pokémon after all. Preceding that little detour, we venture through Eterna Forest while escorting a lady known as Cheryl through the forest, essentially being an introduction to the companion mechanic, a feature that shows up 3 more times throughout Platinum, or 4 times if you go through the optional task of finding Myra in Wayward Cave, located below this region's version of the cycling road. Sooner or later, we make it to Eterna City and subsequently have a battle with the gym leader, Gardenia, who specializes in grass-type Pokémon, if you couldn't tell by the name, or even the gym's aesthetic anyway. It's a rather simple battle, but she does have a Roserade which is rather volatile at this point of the game, so be wary I guess. But anyway, after we wipe the floor with her with either Restoravia or Monferno, we're off to our next gym badge. But not before taking on another of Team Galactic's commanders, Jupiter, in the Team Galactic Eterna building. Great name there guys, truly original. After that though, assuming you didn't get wiped by her skunk tank anyway, then we're off for our third gym badge, which, unlike Diamond and Pearl, is located in Hearthome City, against the ghost type gym leader, Fantina. Fantina's probably the first instance of an actual difficulty spike in Platinum because of her Miss Magius, but if you have something like a Luxio that can learn Bite, or even better, Crunch, then you should have an easy time. Just be careful of Confuse Ray though. RNG in RPGs can either be your best friend or your worst enemy. Soon after we're done with the French lass, we make our way to Veilstone City, but not before going through Route 209, which has really good music. Seriously, take a proper listen. But yeah, when we make it to Veilstone City, we discover that our next gym challenge is a fighting type 1. So assuming you still have a Staravia, or better yet, a Staraptor by this point, you should be able to breeze through this gym pretty quickly, although be wary of her Lucario, it resists the flying type after all. So you'll only do neutral damage as opposed to super effective damage. There's also a moment after the gym where you have to help either Dawn or Lucas, depending on what gender of avatar you pick, with getting their Pokédex back from some Team Galactic grunts.
A little bit of ego mixed
Again,
in.
this mostly
I don't
serves
hate
as padding,
Dawn by any means
but
at all. A lot of
it's
people have kind of gotten the wrong
decent
impression
experience.
from
Thus,
me on
getting
that.
to battle alongside either of Dawn or Lucas is an novelty in and of itself.
You don't really
I
get to see the other team.
Next, we're off to Pastoria City, the location of our next gym challenge. The gym leader here is known as Crash Awake, or just Wake, if you prefer, and he specializes in water-type Pokémon. So if you chose Turtwig, which should be a Totera by this point, you'll have an easy enough time. But Wake does have a Gyarados, who resists grass-type moves, and a Floatzel with Ice Fang, for that matter, which is quad effective against Torterra because of its grass ground type, so just take precaution. Personally, on my last playthrough of Platinum, Wake's Floatzel gave me a lot of trouble, considering its really good base 115 speed stat and its access to the aforementioned Ice Fang, causing a lot of problems for me and my Torterra. But with enough strategizing, that is paralyzing the thing to cut its speed by 75% or even relying on RNG through the confused status, you should be able to pull through, eventually. And so, after enough soft resets and tested patience, we leave the gym with our newly acquired Fen badge, only to be interrupted by an explosion of all things in the Great Marsh, Sinnoh's Safari Zone, in Pastoria itself. We end up giving chase to the grunt who set off the bomb, but this just ends up being more padding than anything. Are you seeing the pattern here? Most of what has happened with Team Galactic so far can be put down as padding. It's not until slightly later on where things start picking up in terms of their actions, but until then, I can definitely see why Team Galactic are seen as an annoyance, more than anything, which, actually, that's rather appropriate for grunts because that's all they are really. Nevertheless, after slowly wading our way through Route 212 through all of the swamps, we start making our way back to Jubilife City, which, alternatively, is a lot easier now because of how we got HMO2 Fly from Veilstone, along with the ability to actually use it from the gym leader too. Once there, we exit out of the west gate only to be greeted by a bunch of water, and because we now have the Fen badge, we can use the Surf HM outside of battle, which we also got from Pastoria City. And as a side note, despite Surf being a HM, it's actually one of the best moves in the game, hitting everything around it, which can be a detriment in double battles mind you, but with some planning, it's not really a problem. Anyway, after we ride our surfing Pokémon of choice across the water, we arrive at Canalave City, and yes, I am fully aware of how the anime pronounces it, but since this is text-to-speech, I don't really have a choice either way. Pronunciations aside, Canalave City is a rather quaint location. There's not much to it, granted, but it's just a nice little place and has some really peaceful music at night. Well anyway, after we finish gushing
Emil,
over the
glad to see
pretty
you here.
music,
If you
we
don't mind,
go and
let's
take
team
on the
up.
gym
Pokemon
leader,
seem to be
but
restless.
not before doing some training at
decided
Iron
to go
Island,
together
where
with
we get our
Riley.
second
Pokemon get hurt, I'll
mainline
heal
story
them up.
instance of
So
the
glad-
companion mechanic with Riley, who I think is one of the coolest characters in the series thanks to his portrayal in the anime and for another reason. But what that reason is, I'm not sure. Whatever, probably doesn't matter anyway. But after that, we then take on our 6th gym challenge against Byron, who specializes in Steel-type Pokémon. Not a lot to talk about in terms of his team here, they're all pretty easy to take down. It's also here that we find out Byron is actually the father of Rourke, who we faced back in Auburg City, a neat little piece of world building right there. Soon after, we are called in by Barry to the Canlade Library to meet with Professor Owen, where all of a sudden an explosion goes off, again. This time however, it's taken place at Lake Valor along Route 214, yet again by Team Galactic. Panic ensues, and being that we're the only one who can progress the story, we are, of course, tasked with investigating the explosion at Lake Valor. So we head off there, and once we arrive we, of course, have to battle through a bunch of Team Galactic grunts, all to get to their commander. But this time, instead of being greeted by Mars or Jupiter for a second time, which we are later anyway, but nevertheless, we are greeted by Commander Saturn. He's nothing special honestly, not only in terms of his team but his character also, in my opinion. Saturn's probably the least developed of the commanders and also gets the least screen time, so that alone kind of tells you how not important he is unfortunately. But anyway, much like I said, after we beat Saturn at Lake Valor, we then go off to battle Mars at Lake Verity, just northwest of our hometown, Twin Leaf Town. We swiftly deal with her in, arguably, an easier battle because of how much we've grown since the last, and then we're tasked with going to Lake Acuity to take care of Jupiter. But where is Lake Acuity? Well, it's just west of Snow Point City, aka our next gym challenge location. So in a stroke of luck, we have to head up there anyway. Now, the routes leading up to Snow Point City are rather infamous for being so slow, especially not helped when you take the game speed of Gen 4 into account, which I've mentioned a couple of times up to this point. But seeing as we can't get to Snow Point City any other way, we are forced to wade our way through deep snow, all the while stuck in a rather violent snowstorm, which is where we get introduced to the weather condition of hail, a mechanic in which, every turn, assuming your Pokémon isn't an ice type or doesn't have one of the abilities like Ice Body, Snow Cloak, Magic Guard, or Overcoat, or is holding the safety goggles item, you will take steady damage each turn. This mechanic can be problematic with poor planning or the fact the text scrolls with, the wild foes, blank, is buffeted by the hail, each turn, slowing battles as a result, so yeah, not fun. Anyhow, we eventually make it to Snow Point City and, the music is beautiful. Both day and night themes actually. And if you didn't know, most of Sinnoh's music was composed on the piano, and I think it all turned out great because of it. Much better than what Gen 3 did with the trumpets anyway. Following the usual beats, shortly after we make it into Snow Point City, we take on the gym challenge, which if you couldn't tell by the location, the name of the gym leader, Candice, or even the gym itself, this is an ice type gym. Realistically, you should be okay with this one because the ice type is the weakest in terms of defenses, so if you have a steel type, or better yet, a fire type on your team, you'll be more than okay. Considering the rather important nature of the task we were given, to take on Jupiter at Lake Acuity, without delay, we soon head up there, now with the ability to use HM08 rock climb outside of battle. Don't use it in battle though, it kind of sucks to be honest, because of its 85% accuracy, but it does have a 20% chance of causing confusion, so it could be of use to you, I don't know. Nevertheless, we make it to Lake Acuity, only to find out Jupiter has succeeded in her mission, most likely because it took us like 8 years to get there because of the deep snow on Route 213 and 214. Now, of course, we can't just leave Team Galactic now that they have the 3 lake spirits, as Elf, Uxie and Mespirit, so we give chase all the way back to Veilstone using Fly because, why wouldn't we? And start making our way through the Team Galactic HQ, until we make it to the leader of Team Galactic, Cyrus. We have encountered Cyrus a few times in the story up until now, but I didn't think it was worth mentioning him until later on, so here we are. Regardless, we beat Cyrus in a battle, to which then our target is set on making our way up to the very top of Sinnoh at the Spear Pillar, where Cyrus plans to awaken Dialga and Palkia to wipe the slate clean and start over in a new world. Yep, Cyrus is rather omnicidal. Admittedly, when it comes to the sense of urgency in a story, Platinum has it right with Cyrus wanting to reset the world, which would also bring about the end of the world as a result obviously, but at the same time, in terms of story pacing, Platinum kind of falls flat in my opinion, because of how this event takes place before our 8th gym challenge. That aside, after making it up to Spear Pillar and having a double battle with both Mars and Jupiter, with Barry assisting us, Cyrus just goes ahead and summons both Dialga and Palkia using the red chain he had crafted from capturing the lake spirits, but by doing so, Cyrus has effectively disturbed the balance between worlds, and as a result, has awakened a failsafe of the Pokémon world, Giratina.
Interesting. So there is a Pokémon that can only appear as a shadow. Regardless, the effort is rash and foolish. I have harnessed the powers of Dialga and Palkia. I, Cyrus, won't have any more
Okay, being real here, that scene where Giratina jumps at the screen gets me every time somehow. Seeing as a portal has opened up, connecting both Giratina's home realm, the distortion world and our own, and if left long enough the infrastructure of ours will just collapse, not wasting any time, we make our way into Giratina's home turf. To go off on a tangent here, the distortion world is one of, if not the best locale in the mainline Pokémon games. A trippy, alternate world where the laws of physics aren't obeyed nor does time pass. The distortion world is an amazing set piece. Sure, in reality, the distortion world is rather barren with there being no items to collect or Pokémon to find, but that doesn't really matter when you're exploring an alternate dimension, the home of Giratina, which is essentially the Pokémon world's equivalent to Satan. Getting back on topic here, once we make our way through the giant, admittedly rather confusing puzzle that is the distortion world, we confront Cyrus once and for all in a final battle. Now beware, his team is extremely potent, even this late into the game. It's a team that's been crafted, if you will, to take down Giratina, so obviously every Pokémon is gonna be at least somewhat potent. However, if you can pull through, or just soft reset a few times until the battle goes your way, Cyrus states that despite his loss to you, he will not give up in creating his new world, only to then walk off screen, never to be seen again in the series, well, until Ultra Sun and Moon anyway, but that's not important right now, nor will it ever will be. And when we're done with that, there's only one thing left to do, catch, or defeat, Giratina. Once you do manage either of those, you then exit the distortion world, ending up in a place called Send-Off Spring, and you are then left with obtaining your 8th and final gym badge before you can then take on the Pokémon League. And so, you do just that. Putting all of what just happened behind you, really highlighting this game's issue with pacing as a result, you head off to Sunyshore City, the location of your 8th gym challenge, and that's pretty much it. Oh, and by the way, Sunyshore City has some fantastic music. The 8th gym leader is known as Vokna, who, not to be confused with Falkner from Johto, specializes in electric type Pokémon. So if you still have your Torterra, assuming you chose Turtwig anyway, or any other ground type, this gym will be a breeze for you. There is a neat little side activity given to us by this guy called Flint beforehand, telling us to try and reignite the fire in Vokna's heart, citing a lost passion for Pokémon battles after no worthy challengers had come to Sunyshore City in a while, going so far as to even considering taking on the Pokémon League. So there's a neat piece of character insight for us. After we wipe the floor with Vokna, now having reignited his passion for Pokémon battles, we are given our 8th gym badge, meaning we can finally take on the Pokémon League. So we start making our way there, first having to venture through the traditional Victory Road, and once we're through, it's finally time to finish our journey. But not before an admittedly challenging final battle with your rival Barry. Sinnoh's Elite Four can be quite the hurdle without the right setup or proper foresight, but through enough training and decent strategizing, you'll make it through the 4. The Elite Four specializes in the Bug type, the Ground type, the Fire type, and the Psychic type. In that order, by the way. And if you're wondering, my favorite Sinnoh Elite Four member is Lucian. He's got a really cool design in my opinion, and his team is pretty cool too, and yes, Lucian is a guy. Might have just been me, but when I was young, I thought he was a girl. Yeah, my bad. But ultimately, your final battle will be against the champion of the Sinnoh region. And oh boy.
Have you been keeping well? Thank you for Mount Coronet, and for the Distortion World. I'm truly grateful. Together, you and your Pokemon overcame all the challenges you faced, however difficult. It means that you've triumphed over any personal weaknesses too. The power you learned, I can feel it emanating from you. But that's enough talk. Let's get on with why you're here. As the Pokemon League champion, I accept your challenge.
I'm sorry, Cynthia is the best champion trainer in the entire series in my opinion. Whether that be for her design, her character, or even her amazing team. Cynthia is just so good, and her battle theme is amazing too. Her team will put up one hell of a fight, and her signature Pokemon, Garchomp, is no joke. Garchomp was extremely volatile in Gen 4, and it can be joked that Cynthia isn't your final challenge, but this one Garchomp is. Yeah, it's that powerful. Now of course, with some planning you can easily overcome this Garchomp. Well, easily, but in my case, even with planning, I just got extremely lucky by my Garchomp. Yes, I had a Garchomp on my last playthrough, hanging on by literally 1 HP, and then pulling through with a single Dragon Claw, despite being like 4 levels below Cynthia's. That will forever be one of the best moments in my entire Pokemon career. Unfortunately, I don't have any footage to back up what I'm saying here, but I assure you, it was awesome and I genuinely lost it when it happened. Be that as it may, when you defeat Cynthia in a definitely hard-fought battle, you are done. You are the new champion of Sinnoh, and once you've registered your team in the Hall of Fame, your adventure in the Sinnoh region is over. Well, not quite. Truth be told, Platinum has a rather fleshed out post-game, arguably the best post-game of any mainline Pokemon game to date, but I'm not gonna be talking about the post-game here, sorry. Why? Well, try not to treat what I'm about to say as a cop-out, but I honestly feel Platinum's post-game is best experienced firsthand. In other words, I recommend you play it for yourself, ideally without prior knowledge, but considering Platinum's been out for more than 10 years now, that's highly unlikely, but even so, that's why I'm not gonna talk about it. It's that good in my opinion. Although we're done with the story, that's not all that Platinum has to offer. There are a bunch of side activities you can do as well. One such activity is that you can go underground to explore the, well, underground of Sinop using the explorer's kit which you get from the underground man, who you can find in Eternity. In my opinion, this is a neat feature. While here, you can mine in certain spots to obtain various items such as colored shards, evolutionary stones and even the rare type plates. It's well worth just spending some time down in the underground to see what you can pick up, and on top of that, it's pretty fun mining for items too. There's also contests, which is a feature returning from the Gen 3 games, where you have a selection of minigames of sorts, where your final goal is to win the contest so that you can put ribbons on your Pokémon and that explanation seemed kind of vague and rushed. Well, that's because I don't particularly care for Pokémon contests in any game that they appear in really, they are just not my thing. I'm sorry. Uniquely, in Platinum, and Diamond and Pearl too, there's an area known as Amity Square. Here, you can take certain specified Pokémon on walks around this little area, where you can find a number of items and just spend some quality time with your Pokémon. There's a set list of Pokémon you can take in here, only totaling 20, but it's a cute feature admittedly, and for a sort of precursor to the follow mechanic introduced in the next Gen 4 games, Heart Gold and Soul Silver, it was a pretty neat teaser for what was to come honestly. Touching on game speed once more, again, Platinum is faster than Diamond and Pearl in terms of the surfing and battle speed slightly, but with battle speed, HP scrolls at 30 HP per second, which, for Pokemon like Blissey who have a truckload of HP, this isn't fun to sit through and honestly, the game speed is something that deters me before each playthrough. It's a shame really, because otherwise, Platinum is a fantastic game. But I can totally see why people would be deterred from the idea of playing through Platinum once they experience the game's speed, considering future generations vastly improve upon game speed. I think when it comes to Platinum, it's a rather divisive game for many. It's dearly beloved by a lot of people, including myself, but in contrast, is heavily reviled by a lot of people. It's easy to understand either side of the debate. Now sure, there are other Pokémon games that are way more divisive than Platinum. Let's go Eevee and Pikachu being good examples, but for me, Platinum, despite all of its flaws, some minor some more drastic, I think I will always love. It's not my favorite Pokémon game nowadays, that title is held by Pokémon Black, but Platinum was my first Pokémon game. The one I started with. Now, in hindsight to some, Platinum may not have been the best introduction to the series, but you know, I don't mind that I had my beginnings with Platinum. It taught me patience, and patience is a virtue after all, so I'm thankful for that at least. Platinum's always gonna mean a lot to me, and I don't think that's ever gonna change. You can't really love something until you can acknowledge its flaws and be able to look past them to enjoy the product for what it is, you know?